So today on Twitter, I asked you all, when it comes to college football, what hill are you willing to die on? And y'all had some takes. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Eyes on Oklahoma. My name is Joe Irwin Bettner, and let's talk about some of these tweets because there were some really good ones. And if you didn't see the thread, first off, follow Eyes on Oklahoma on Twitter. But if you'd like to participate in this exercise, please comment down below. What college football hill are you willing to die on? Maybe we'll do a part 2 if we get enough good responses. All right, this first one is pretty mild. It comes from username John Higgins57. Shout out the Red Dirt Sport Discord. His tweet: bowl games should be removed from hosting playoff games, and instead, playoff games should be hosted at the higher seed stadium until the title game. I couldn't agree with this one any more than I do. It is a perfect idea that I understand why college football won't do it, but man, it'd be pretty sick if they did, because let me tell you something. The New Year's Six games, and we will get into those in a little bit, but the New Year's Six rotation of games, great vacation spots. Not gonna knock anything about the actual bowl games independent of what they are within the college football landscape, but like independently, great locations, great bowls. Any team would be very, very happy to be at any of those places, but no team in their right mind would rather be there than at their home stadium. Imagine a college football playoff semifinal game in Norman, Oklahoma. That would have been the case back in 2017 if this was the deal before. In 2017, OU would have been hosting Georgia in Norman. Imagine that atmosphere. Imagine Oklahoma not blowing the lead that they created in the first half because they have so much momentum from the home crowd, and it's a reward for the team that played the best throughout the regular season and gets one of those top 2 seeds. I just think it makes a lot, it just makes a little too much sense that it will never get implemented in college football. Now, they are kicking the idea around that maybe quarterfinal games could be played on campuses. I don't know if that's going to happen. We're still kind of waiting to see what college football playoff expansion will look like, but if we could get some of these games on campuses, I think it's a terrific idea. Would love to know what you guys think. The energy at a, Owen Field or a Tuscaloosa, Georgia, imagine, Baton Rouge for a playoff game. I know I'm mostly just naming off of SEC teams, but it's just kind of the teams that would be there, and they would be incredible. Even a game up at like Michigan or Ohio State would be incredible. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's too cold for the team from the South coming up north. Who cares? Play better, get the higher seed. That's how you get the home game on campus. I think it's a really great idea. It's probably an idea that will never get off the ground because bowl games are too much of an institution in college football, which leads us into this next one, which a little bit spicier. Realignment and moving away from the traditional bowl structure have hurt college football more than NIL ever will. That comes from Riley Powerbottom. I don't know if I necessarily disagree with this. I think it's actually got some legs to it. And I'll say this. I wish I could have them on here to kind of explain what they mean by traditional bowl structure, because when I read that, I just think the way that the New Year's Six bowls are rotated between playoff sites and the never-ending addition of new random bowl games with really cringy corporate sponsors, it's become a really weird thing. Realignment as well is going to have a huge impact on college football and might even lead to a certain conference that Oklahoma is going to maybe create their own playoff. Who knows? And I don't know if that will hurt college football. I just think it'll be a different version of college football, and it might not be the version of college football that you liked or grew up watching, and it'll be different. So I don't know. I still think we're all going to be crazy for college football, but I do think that this has created somewhat of a riff in the sport that we have not really seen before. And it's been a slow build to this over the last decade. So think for a second about how bowl games have been devalued over the last decade. A lot of it has to do with star players opting out and going to the NFL draft. I don't begrudge any of those players. I completely get the business decision behind it. But when it comes to being a college football fan, both can be true. It's not as fun. It's not as fun for fans, and I wish that all of the players would play, but I completely understand why they don't and support them in that. Just I think you can both support what they're doing as far as trying to increase the likelihood of their pro career panning out, but also being a little bit disappointed that we don't have the former college model where players did, no matter what, would want to play in the bowl game. It's a little different now. There are probably ways that the conferences and bowl games could maybe, incentivize teams to partake in these bowl games, come up with some ideas, maybe have some initiative in trying to fix this product that is currently breaking. I don't have all the answers. One thing I would love to see is that the bowl game doesn't affect the 4-game redshirt rule. I think that always should have been the case, because when you look at the end of the season, the amount of injuries that pile up, and now that in the transfer portal era, some guys that are leaving after the regular season ends, and in some cases leaving in the middle of the season. So it makes sense to maybe be a little bit more lenient when it comes to that redshirt rule when it comes postseason time. The one thing that I do think bowl games could become is somewhat of a showcase for players that didn't get the opportunity to shine that much during the regular season, to actually put some tape together and obviously make a case to be a starter on next year's team wherever school they're at, but also it could become one where it's kind of a audition to show the rest of college football, like, hey, I'm pretty good and I'm not getting a whole lot of playing time, but if you like this tape from the Alamo Bowl, hit me up because I'll be in the transfer portal. Not encouraging tampering by any means whatsoever. I just think that bowl games could have a lot of benefit to A, the team, B, the player, and C, the fans. I think we can make this work. Obviously, I think there's probably some creative things that you could do with gambling. That's not a novel idea on my part, but there's probably some sports betting stuff as that becomes more legal throughout the U.S. that you could make those games a little bit more interesting. I definitely think that bowl games just need a lot of improvement to get fans back on board with watching them. Barry Trammell, columnist from the Oklahoman, put it best in a piece that he wrote last year. If players don't care about bowl games, why should I? Couldn't agree more. It's just becoming less and less of an event each and every year. We can probably fix the college football bowl season. I just don't know what it looks like, and I hope that we do get it fixed. Next one comes from JScrib325. Until the playoffs expand and include automatic conference bids, the myth that any team can make the playoffs and win a championship is just that, a myth. There are probably 50 to 60 D1 teams with no shot, and that number is honestly conservative. It is conservative. There are probably, like 90 teams that have absolutely zero chance at winning a national title anytime soon. Now, we have seen over the last few decades, specifically in the Big 12, teams like Oklahoma State and Baylor, both programs that if you would have asked me at the beginning of the 21st century, which I was like 6, so maybe don't ask me then, but if you would have asked me that, are these two programs going to regularly contend for conference championships and, knock on the door of being national powers? Probably would have said no. And I don't think that they're national powers now, but I do think that Oklahoma State and Baylor have done enough to show that they can build a program. It's a lot of cash infusion and a lot of, dedication to improving facilities and resources and keeping those things up to date as college football quickly changes year and year by year. But it can be done. It's just very hard at the Power 5 level to kind of break through, and you're still seeing that. A program like an Oklahoma State was literally an inch away from getting to the college football playoff. If they beat Baylor in the Big 12 title game, I'm sorry, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State's in your place, and that would have created another conversation. Would have loved it. But on the topic of Cincinnati, I don't know if it's necessarily easier for Group of 5 teams to get into the conversation, because you've seen it with Cincinnati, with Houston a few years ago under Tom Herman, Boise State, obviously. There have been teams that have been able to kind of navigate the Group of 5 level, put together a few decent years of, basically dominating your conference, and you hopefully get a big win over, a non-conference opponent, an opponent that is willing to play you, which is just a whole other beast in itself. But Cincinnati figured out and kind of cracked the code of how do we get to the playoff. They got there. Now they needed a little bit of luck, obviously, as I mentioned with Oklahoma State, but there's just so many factors going against so many college football teams. Just, you have to have the right coach, you have to have the booster and the just financial support needed to compete with an Alabama or Georgia. And you just need a little bit of luck, honestly. And like, that's the thing, is like college football is so chaotic that it's honestly not that crazy to ask of the sport and to kind of break through, but you kind of needed to also break on your side as well. And that's just a tough thing to do in 2022. You're just seeing it year in and year out. And if you don't believe that stars matter, go look at what Alabama and Georgia are recruiting. Now, I think that maybe with NIL, that number can grow, the number of teams that can maybe, actually compete for a national title. Go look at Texas A&M. They essentially bought the top ranked recruiting class in the 2022 cycle. Now, if they can do that over the next 3 to 4 years and keep stacking, top 5 class after top 5 class, Texas A&M, there is no reason, you might scoff at this, just knowing the history of Texas A&M football, there is no reason that they shouldn't compete for a national championship in the very near future if they can continue to stockpile top 5 recruiting classes. It's a lot easier said than done, but Texas A&M is kind of figuring out maybe a way to circumvent the old model and figure out a way to break through a lot quicker than in previous years. Obviously, Lincoln Riley over at Southern Cal, the way that he has used the transfer portal this offseason is honestly kind of scary, how he's overhauled the entire roster. It's essentially a new USC team. I know that a lot of OU fans like to throw around the 4-8 record, but it's pretty hard to judge this group based on that record because there are so many new faces that they have nothing to do with what USC was last year. So going to be interesting how NIL transfer portal is going to maybe change the parity. And honestly, I don't know if it will or not. I think especially as we kind of enter this era where the college football playoff is very, it's uncertain. Not that the playoff is going to go away, but we have no clue what it's going to look like. And the way that the conferences are now moving away from the traditional structure of what conferences were when all of us were growing up, it's just different. And I think it's going to be something that college football programs are going to have to navigate over the next few years. And we're probably not going to have answers for another decade. So that'll be fun. It's fun to talk about. But yeah, I appreciate you all for responding and for subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you're not already, subscribe to Eyes on Oklahoma. And as I mentioned at the top, if you did not participate in the Twitter thread, would love to know in the comments what college football hills you are willing to die on. Maybe we'll do a part 2 later on. That said, my name's Joe Irwin Bettner, and y'all have a great week.